Yo, this is Andrew, and today I would like to focus on exam difficulty and pacing guide for grade 7 AAHL students. Now, at HL, the time pressure is real. You have 110 marks, you have 2 hours, and you usually need at least 95, but of course, ideally 110 to ensure that the 7 is in the bag. This is to make sure that no matter what happens to your IA, you still get that 7 that you've been working so hard for. Now, let's have a closer look at the graph we have here. This graph shows the difficulty of the question relative to the progression of paper. So in the first part, questions 1 to 5. This is typically the SL stuff. Sometimes they will try to change things up. They will add some SL content at the very end. They will add a bit of HL stuff at the beginning. But typically speaking, the first half of the section A is usually not too bad. Question 6 to 9 is where things get a bit spicier. It will get progressively harder as we hit the end of section A. Section B usually consists of 3 questions, and each question has its own progression, as we can see. The start of question 10 will start at the same level as question 1, ideally, and will pick up a bit over time. At the end, the last part of question 10 is usually the hardest part of the entire question. 11A is then a step down from the last part of 10 because they want you to keep pushing. They don't want you to go, okay, I've reached my limit. I cannot go much further from here. I give up. That's not what they want. They want you to show all you can do. So start question 11 will start at a point that is higher than the start of question 10, but lower than the hardest part of question 10. And then it will also get gradually more difficult over time. Same thing with question 12. This is the hardest question on the paper. It is also the most unpredictable. And I can never tell you what's going to show up on question 12. This is a wild card. Literally anything can show up. Even on the SL paper for M25, you guys had a very wild question. Keep in mind that there are approximately 40 marks common to both papers. This is even more important for the weaker students as they should get most of their marks from the SL content. Now, knowing that, how are we going to use our 2 hour? 1. Reading time. This is technically not part of a 2 hour. Please read the entire paper cover to cover. You should know what questions to skip in round 1. Only focus on stuff that you do know. Start with a question that you will get correct. That will build your confidence as we progress through the paper. And of course, never ever forget to breathe. 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds, 4 seconds out. Let's do it. Breathe in, hold it, breathe out. Let's do it again. Breathe in, hold it, breathe out. Now that you're calm and your brain has enough oxygen, it's time to look at the game plan. So, I split the game time into 6 parts, questions 1 to 5, 6 to 7, 8 to 9, 10, 11, and 12. I'm assuming that questions 10, 11, and 12 are each worth about a third of section B marks, so each question is worth around 18 to 20 marks. This is not always true, but they usually shoot for this. Questions 1 to 5, this is the easy stuff. Because it's easy, don't spend more than 30 seconds per mark. For example, if they give you, let's say, if log base 2 of 3 is equal to A, express log base 2 of 12, that question is technically worth 2 marks, but it should take you 2 seconds to write down the answer if you're working at level 7. The goal of this is to accumulate as much time as possible so that you can focus on the grade 7 stuff. TLDR, you should spend about 10 to 15 minutes on the first 5 questions of the paper. Questions 6 and 7 are a bit trickier. I would recommend spending about 10 minutes. Question 8 and 9 are usually the hardest. If you have banked some time from the easier questions, it is totally fine to spend 15 to 20 minutes on questions 8 and 9. For question 10, this is usually the crossover. In other words, this question shows up on both SL and HL. Therefore, you should spend about 10 minutes on this question. No more, no less. Well, less if you can, without making stupid errors. Question 11 is usually worth 18 marks. You should spend about a mark per minute for this question. It's usually not too out of the ordinary, but it is going to be your typical HL content. You should aim to spend about 15 to 20 minutes on this. And for the last question, that will usually contain 1 or 2 evil question parts that will trip you up. So expect to spend about half an hour on the maximum. So if we look at the time allocation, you've noticed that we would spend around 35 to 50 minutes in section A and 15 minutes to an hour on section B. So in total, you have between 10 minutes and 35 minutes in case of emergencies. During practice, I would recommend finish past papers in about 75% of the allotted time. For HL, that would mean finish the entire paper in an hour and a half. That is a very realistic target because on exam day, you are going to write slower than you would during practice because you have to provide more explanation, for example. Or if you're like me, who would rather not touch their CDC for the entire time before you actually have to, it takes quite a bit of time to punch all the numbers into your CDC. Keep that in mind. A couple notes before we move on to paper 3. 1. Check your work right after finishing the question. Do not count on the last 10 minutes ever. Because the thing is, in theory, yes, you have a 2-hour paper. The paper is 110 marks. If you pace at a mark per minute, that would give you 10 minutes at the end to check your answers. Except that then you are dead. Mentally and physically. Your brain will be mush. You will not be able to proofread your work. Do it once, do it right. If you're stuck for a question part for too long, you should skip and leave it to round 2. If you're not stuck, especially in section B, just finish the question in one go. And the reason being that all the parts in the questions are related in some way, shape, or form. If you realize you make a mistake, I would recommend ignore it, move on to the next questions, Then come back to it when your brain is cleared. That way, you are more likely to spot your own errors. In many cases, I would recommend literally start from scratch again because it would take a bit less time to start from zero than going through your own handwriting and spotting for that missing negative sign. Trust me, I've been there too many times. Paper 3, an hour and 15 minutes. Stay calm. This is the most important advice. If there's one thing I want you to get away from the video, stay calm. The examiners are your friends. Their job is to assess you properly. And to do that, they have to give you a lot, and I mean a lot, of opportunities to re-enter the question should you unable to finish a part. There are always opportunities to re-enter. Get the easy GDC marks. Stuff like sketch the curve or sketch the family of curves when n equals 2. Sketch the family of curves when n equals 3. Those marks are freebies. Do not ever lose those marks. Keep pushing, even if you have to skip a part. For example, this is a more typical version of paper 3. Let's say for this hypothetical question has 8 parts. Notice that 3 of the 8 parts are showed up. Similar to paper 1 and 2, if there is a show that question, you have to be very careful with the way you present your work because you want to demonstrate that you actually know how to carry out the procedure and not pushing your way through to the answer. That said, if you're stuck, let's say you're stuck at part A and you're unable to do part B, the show that part is there so that you can take that result to solve for parts C, D, and E, and so on. Take the results and move on. If you fail to establish the results, take their results and move on. You will forfeit O. You will lose O of your accuracy marks if you are stubborn and you refuse to take their correct answer in the show that question. With that, I wish you the best of luck for paper 3. The credit boundaries of paper 3 have increased significantly since the introduction of the paper. So really, I cannot give you a realistic boundaries for level 7 anymore. What I can say, however, is that a well-prepared student is still able to get maybe a 50 or 55. There's usually one part that is going to be a curveball, but apart from that exception, you should be able to get pretty much every single mark on the paper. Best of luck, and I will see you soon.